Hello and welcome back to Mystery Mug. Today we're diving into a tale that chills the bones. A story that has haunted campfire circles, kept locals up at night, and drawn cryptid enthusiasts from across the country. This is the legend of the Beast of Land Between the Lakes, also known as the Beast of LBL. It's a story that has loomed large in the folklore of Kentucky and Tennessee for decades, ever since a fateful night in 1973. When an innocent family's trip into the wilderness ended in terror. Settle in and brace yourself for a tale that blurs the line between myth and reality. Setting the stage, Land Between the Lakes. To truly understand the horror of this story, let's first step into the world of the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, or LBL, an expanse of dense forests, winding trails, misty marshes, and secluded coves. LBL is a sprawling, rugged stretch that spans over 170,000 acres, nestled between Kentucky Lake to the west and Lake Barkley to the east. The landscape feels frozen in time, wild and untouched, filled with echoes of history and hints of something lurking in the shadows. LBL has always had a unique charm, drawing in campers, hunters, and adventurers. In the early 1970s, the allure of a quiet, wooded escape had only grown, with families from across the country traveling here with tents, campers, and dreams of peaceful nights under the stars. But among locals, the beauty of LBL is paired with caution, and for good reason. Stories dating back centuries spoke of something lurking in those woods, something that was neither human nor animal, but something else. An old folktale has been passed down through generations, a tale whispered from parent to child. They say that at dusk, the forest comes alive with spirits. And among those spirits is a creature, a giant beast with the body of a wolf and the mind of a man. The creature, sometimes called the shadow wolf, is said to stalk the shadows, hunting any who dare enter its territory at night. And if you hear a deep howl in the distance, they say, it's already too late. Most locals laugh it off. But there are some who say that the story isn't just a tale to scare children, that it's a warning. In 1973, one unsuspecting family from Florida would come face to face with what locals believe is the legendary shadow wolf itself, a family's fateful journey. The story centers on the Turner family from Florida, a mom named Susan, her husband Mark, their teenage son Danny, and young daughter Jennifer. They were a close-knit family with a love for the outdoors, and like many others, they were looking to get away from the noise of everyday life and reconnect with nature. Mark was a banker, Susan a high school teacher. Both were avid hikers, and they wanted to pass that love of nature on to their children. 15-year-old Danny had been somewhat reluctant, but was still curious about the adventure, hoping for some quiet time to listen to his music. 8-year-old Jennifer, on the other hand, was bubbling with excitement, eager to roast marshmallows and hear ghost stories by the fire. With their camper packed, their sleeping bags ready, and their spirits high, the family set off on their trip. After winding down narrow, empty roads deep into LBL, they found a remote camping spot far from other visitors. Their campsite was surrounded by towering pine trees, their rough, sticky bark filling the air with the scent of pine and earth. A low fog hung in the air, lingering around their ankles as they set up camp, giving the entire scene an eerie, otherworldly feeling. The children joked about ghosts in the mist, but Susan felt a prickling unease at the back of her mind, a sense that the forest was watching them. She brushed it off, smiling as she watched her kids laugh and play. The family set up their campsite, roasting marshmallows around the fire and relaxing. But as they settled in, the usual sounds of forest life, birds chirping, insects humming, even the distant calls of animals, began to fade. Soon, there was only silence. The world seemed to be holding its breath. Mark tried to reassure everyone, saying it was probably just the chill of nightfall keeping the animals quiet. But in truth, he felt it too, a sense of something else out there, lurking in the darkness beyond their firelight. Then, just as the sun slipped below the horizon, an eerie howl cut through the air. A night of terror. The family had just finished roasting marshmallows, their laughter still hanging in the air when the sound startled them. It was deep and guttural, carrying a strange, unearthly resonance, that seemed to reach inside each of them, clawing at their nerves. They exchanged nervous chuckles, trying to laugh it off, dismissing it as a distant coyote or maybe a bear. But Danny felt a cold sweat prickling at the back of his neck. He thought he'd seen something move at the edge of the clearing, a dark shape, tall and massive, slipping between the trees. The evening wore on, but the family couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Strange noises emerged from the woods, the soft crackling of branches snapping underfoot, the heavy rustle of something large pushing through the undergrowth. Soon, the family realized these sounds weren't random. They were deliberate. Heavy, calculated footsteps circled their campsite just beyond the glow of the campfire. Mark stood up, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was out there, but he saw only shifting shadows. Trying to mask his worry, he suggested they head inside the camper for the night, locking the doors behind them. Inside, they lay in their beds, listening. The air was thick with the earthy smell of the damp forest and the faint, acrid scent of burning wood. Outside, the footsteps grew louder, circling the camper, slow and deliberate, as if taunting them. Suddenly, they heard a faint scratching sound, like claws dragging across the metal surface of the camper. Jennifer whimpered, clutching her mother's hand as the scratching grew louder, more insistent. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the noise stopped. The second night. The family hardly slept that night, but by morning, they tried to shake off the previous night's terror. Mark and Susan whispered to each other, wondering if they should cut the trip short, but they decided not to alarm the kids. They spent the day hiking, trying to push away the memory of the footsteps, the scratching, and the eerie howl. But as dusk fell, that prickling sense of dread returned. The forest seemed darker than before, the trees casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to reach toward them. An unnatural quiet descended on the woods, and as the last light disappeared, the family's sense of safety faded with it. That night the sounds returned, louder, more deliberate. The footsteps were heavier now, quicker, closing in on the camper in tight, relentless orbits. Inside, they could feel the camper shudder slightly with each heavy step. And then, a massive blow struck the side of the camper, rattling the walls. Mark scrambled to find the flashlight while Susan tried to calm the children, but before they could react, the sound of metal tearing apart filled the air. Whatever was outside had begun ripping into the camper, tearing through the metal as if it were paper. The gruesome discovery. 2 days later, park rangers arrived at the campsite, alerted by a neighboring camper who had noticed the family's absence. They stumbled upon a scene of unimaginable horror. The camper had been torn open, its metal sides twisted and splintered as if shredded by something with incredible strength. Inside, blood stained the walls and furniture, splattered in patterns that suggested a violent struggle. Deep, jagged claw marks, gouged into the camper's walls, hinted at a creature far beyond the power of any known animal. The bodies of Mark and Susan were found just outside the camper, their faces frozen in expressions of pure horror. Susan's arm was outstretched, reaching toward the tree line where Jennifer's remains were found high up in the branches, as though some monstrous force had lifted her there, a grotesque display of strength. Danny's body, found nearby, showed signs of a desperate struggle, his skin marred with deep, horrifyingly precise claw marks. Veteran rangers who had seen animal attacks before were shaken to their cores. Nothing had prepared them for this level of brutality, and they couldn't shake the feeling that what they were looking at was no animal attack. The beast of LBL. Soon, word spread like wildfire. Stories of a creature haunting the woods of LBL, long whispered by locals, now gained traction. People began calling it the beast of LBL, describing it as a massive, wolf-like figure that stood on 2 legs, towering over 7 feet tall. Witnesses claimed it had an elongated snout, sharp, gleaming teeth, and eyes that glowed with an unnatural intelligence. In the weeks following the attack, locals reported strange sightings, shadowy figures moving through the woods, blood-curdling howls echoing in the dead of night, and a sense of dread that blanketed the area. The legend of the beast of LBL grew, becoming part of the region's eerie folklore. Conclusion: myth or reality? So was there truly a family that met a gruesome fate in the woods of LBL in 1973? Is the beast of LBL a creature of unimaginable strength, a predator lurking in the shadows, ready to strike? Or is it merely a terrifying story, passed down through generations to keep listeners on edge? Whether fact or fiction, the story of the beast endures. And as long as there are dark woods left to explore, as long as curious souls venture into places like LBL, tales like this will continue to captivate and terrify those who dare to listen. So the next time you're camping out under a canopy of stars, stay close to the fire and remember, you never know what might be watching from the shadows. Thank you for joining us as we explored one of America's darkest legends.